Well, hello. Just a quick video here on the concept of copyright and the existence of the copyright in the name of the Queen. There's a website which caused me to go and check this stuff out, which I'll show you a little bit later, but let's just take a look at the whole idea of the monarchy and copyright. And this, of course, is Wikipedia for the monarchy, which is always got lots of interesting information in it. And if we scroll down a little bit, here we go. Personification of the Canadian state. As the living embodiment of the Crown, that's another thing to investigate, the sovereign is regarded as the personification of the Canadian state. Now notice state here is a lowercase s, not an uppercase s at the beginning of the word. As such, must along with his or her viceregal representatives remain strictly neutral in political terms. The body of the reigning sovereign also thus holds two distinct personas in constant coexistence, that of a natural-born human being and that of the state, as accorded to him or her through law. So there's two separate legal concepts here, the natural-born human being and a fictional persona called person, and that is the state that is created through law. Even in private, the monarch is always on duty. The state is therefore referred to as Her Majesty the Queen in right of Canada, or the Crown in right of Canada, and the monarch's legal personality is sometimes simply referred to as Canada. So sometimes when you are seeing the name Canada, they're talking about the Queen. They're not talking about the nation, they're talking about the legal personality of the Queen. Interesting distinction. As such, the Queen or King of Canada is the employer of all government staff, the guardian of foster children, as well as the owner of all state lands. I'd say that's debatable. And buildings and equipment, and this is held properly. State-owned companies, and the copyright for all government publications, which is the Crown copyright, which is what we're going to look at. This is all in his or her position as sovereign and not as an individual, which would be the natural-born human being, possibly. All such property is held by the Crown in perpetuity and cannot be sold by the sovereign without the proper advice and consent of his or her ministers. The embodiment of the state, the monarch tops the Canadian order of precedence and is the locus of oaths of allegiance. So everybody pledges an oath to the monarch, required of many employees of the Crown, as well as new citizens, as per their oath of citizenship laid out in the Citizen Act. This is done in reciprocation to the sovereign's coronation oath, wherein he or she promises to govern the peoples of Canada according to the respective laws and customs. What if you're a natural-born Canadian and not a new citizen who had to take an oath of citizenship which pledges allegiance to the Queen within that oath? Is that a different status within Canada? I think so. And you'll notice here that in this official portrait of the Queen, she's wearing military medals, and this here is a gold-fringed Canadian flag, which is a point of contention for many people, but research shows it is related to military designation. There is also, not shown here, but there's a gold Canadian maple leaf on the top of the flag, which is also some form of insignia, which is probably military in its designation as well. So we have this personification of the Canadian state in that the Queen, quote unquote, owns everything. That's what they're stating here, and that's the position of the monarchists and the government, is that the Queen owns everything, including everything that is published or created by government staff, because if the government staff creates or writes something, they do it on the job, they're not doing it for themselves, they're doing it for the Queen, therefore the Queen holds the copyright. So that's the concept of Crown copyright. So there's different countries have different acts and issues with regards to copyright in their particular country. Looking at the Canadian Crown copyright, governed by Section 12 of the Copyright Act. We'll look at that in a moment. So covers all works prepared or published by or under the direction or control of Her Majesty or any government department. All right, it lasts until the end of 50 years after the year of creation. Permission has been given in most jurisdictions to freely reproduce certain works for personal or non-commercial purposes. Specific terms and conditions are follows. Now notice, I wasn't aware of this stuff, so I'm just looking at it now, but notice that this Canada here, reproduction of federal law order, and we'll look at British Columbia specifically after this, but there's quite a difference between them. So this is what you can do. Anyone, without charge or request for permission, reproduce enactments and consolidations of enactments of the Government of Canada and decisions and reasons for decisions of federally constituted courts and administrative tribunals, provided due diligence is exercised in ensuing the accuracy of the materials reproduced, and the reproduction is not represented as an official version. So you can reproduce federal law and federal court decisions as long as you indicate it's not an official version. That's you know, pretty wide open there. About Crown copyright, when permission is not required. They have a difference between commercial and non-commercial. But look at this for British Columbia. A person may make a copy of specific acts or regulations in whole or part for personal use or legal use. Notice the limitation to personal or legal use, which is not a part of the federal one. Libraries can make single copies of specific acts or regulations in whole or in part in response to requests from the public, subject to the following rules. So only a single copy, limiting access potentially, and specific acts or regulations, so not all of them. The person receiving limitations are: the person receiving the photocopy legislation may only use such materials for personal use or legal use. Should be advised of this when the copy is made. Personal use refers to its private study or private research. It does not include permission to make copies. So they can make you a copy at the library, but then you can't make a copy at home, supposedly. Legal use refers to reproduction of legislation with letters of advice provided by a lawyer, accountant, or other professional, as well as reproduction of legislation for use in judicial, administrative, or parliamentary proceedings. So unless you're using a photocopy of an act or a law that they have claimed copyright on for one of these purposes here, they can't make a copy. The legislation may not be reproduced by or for members of the public for purposes other than personal use and legal use without prior written consent of the intellectual property program. So it's quite a different guideline for the provincial copyright laws than the federal one. And you can go and look at the various provinces, and then they also have some other countries and how they work. So let's take a look at this. Government of Canada website, Government of Canada publications. This is where they give you information about the rules and regulations around publishing. So let's look at what the Crown copyright is defined as. Information published by Government of Canada is considered to be intellectual property. This type of property is intangible, made up of ideas rather than tangible objects such as buildings or equipment. Ideas alone cannot be copyrighted, but forms of these ideas, words, illustrations, designs can be. Canada's Copyright Act protects ideas in these forms from being appropriated, misused, altered, or misinterpreted. And then they lay out the various things here. Now, this is how they protect it. This is the label, because you obviously have to put a copyright notice on something in order for it to be recognized. And they mention that the Copyright Act is where that is done, and the procedures for copyrighting Crown's work. Right, is recommend the copyright symbol is followed by copyright instructions notice placed on all works regardless of format. And this following example gives a good idea of how the copyright symbol is to be used. Copyright Her Majesty the Queen in right of Canada, represented by the Minister of Public Works and Government Services, or whatever department is publishing it would have their name there, which is their legal name. Free publications, copyright the Queen in right of Canada, represented by the Minister for the department in the year. So this is a standard. This is an official notice with regards to rights and contact and so on. But this is the form. Her Majesty the Queen in right of Canada. Notice the specific wording and the specific style of type. You have capitis diminutio minima on the main words, and then the legal name of the department. So here's a sample from a Health Canada website. We have another example here. If you want to reproduce anything from Health Canada, then you have to put this on it. Her Majesty the Queen in right of Canada, represented by the Minister of Health. So it's consistent. They have a pattern to follow because it's been established. Now this is another one. This is a book released by one of the Parks and Recreation, and here's an example of it in use. Copyright Her Majesty the Queen in right of Canada as represented by Chief Executive Officer of Parks of Canada, Chief Executive Officer sounds kind of corporate now instead of a minister. So what happened to Parks of Canada went into an agency corporate format, I'm sure. So this is the website that caused me to look it up. This is infocanada.ca, and it's an organization that collects information from Canadian people living in Canada and businesses in Canada, and then sells it to telemarketers and to marketing organizations that are sending out anything through the mails, etc. And so they send out or sell different things. If you just want phone numbers, you can buy just phone numbers. If you want phone numbers and address, it costs you more. If you want phone numbers, address, how many people live there, their ages, their income levels, it costs more and more for the different types of information that you want, the different levels of information. All well and good for marketing purposes, but this is what caught my eye. All right, no confidential information, scroll down, about an individual, family, household, organization, or business has been obtained from Statistics Canada. So these things have not been obtained, but everything else has been. And guess who holds the copyright? Copyright Her Majesty the Queen in right of Canada as represented by the Minister of Industry, Statistics Canada 2002. And notice the style of the name Canada. Now this is interesting that the Queen is copywriting the information that's being sold on a business site, first of all, and then the style of the name Canada is in Capitis Diminutio Maxima, whereas if we look at all the other examples, it's in Minima. So I wonder if there's a difference between the Queen selling all of this data to a marketing company that has been collected by Stats Canada. Is this a separate business of the Queen, where the Queen is got a separate company that is selling this and making money from it? And why the difference in the copyright notice? Because as far as a legal notice is concerned, which is what this is, it should be in proper form. So if this is the proper form, and it's not just a typo when you look at everything else, it looks pretty intentional, something else has gone on, I think, there. And I found this when I had a quick look at the Copyright Act, which is where their laws come from with regards to copyrighted material. And there's another video and a write-up on this website with regards to a change in the coat of arms in Canada between 96 and 99. And this is a deletion. They removed the definition of Her Majesty's realms and territories from the Copyright Act in 1997. So I'm curious as to why it was removed and the time that it was removed. I wonder, and I believe, something did happen with the corporate, non-corporate structure of Canada based on the change of the coat of arms, and this may be one of the modifications which came through because of that. So anyways, I found it interesting that the Queen is selling your data to commercial enterprises from Stats Canada. I knew that was going on, but here's some evidence of it. But also the copyright notice and the Capitis Diminutio Maxima that exists on it I find interesting.